have that.
Yay.
Get it?
I got it. All right.
So wines and time.
We're in Ecclesiastes 6 and 7 today.
What is?
In Ecclesiastes 6 and 7. Last night, Marty and I took pictures for the Heritage Ball dance. There's a whole bunch of things that are involved.
Ecclesiastes what?
6 and 7. There are a whole bunch of things that are involved in photography. You've got the lighting, which we have two of them. The candle. Is that all the light you got? There's the background. You know, the backdrop that had to be steamed and all that stuff. We were still buying flowers and whatever to stick into it. And little tea lights that blinked. There's the editing process afterwards. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff. In your day, it was sending it off to someone else and sending it back.
Paying for film.
But
the process.
But all of that is meaningless if you don't have a lens. A camera without a lens is a white box. You know, you take it and there's nothing. Yeah. It turns out, by the way, that we accidentally had the Starfield amplifying lens on the back of it, so all those little twinkly lights come out as little star points, which really made it nice.
The wires cross, right?
But yes, sir. But even without photography, lenses change the way you see things. Now, you actually have gone in for surgery to get your lenses fixed, right? But though even your own vision is through lenses. Sure. So without a lens, you can't see anything.
Naturally, your eyeball has a lens.
It does. It does. Now, change this to a different degree. Have you ever noticed how our lives as Christians aren't really better off than non-Christians? I mean, if you think about it, the divorce rate is the same between people who go to church and people who don't. Our health concerns are still the same. Finances and stresses there are just the same. Death is exactly the same. All statistically they're identical. Whether you go to church, whether you're a Christian or not, all those things are still gonna be the same. And yet, we see and feel things differently in our day-to-day lives. Like for example, wow, it's a shame you missed that eclipse. We had the reservations to go all up there. Or, man, your mother-in-law gave what away? Or, Rush Limbaugh has lung cancer. Or, how is your brother anyway? People ask me that question. Your computer did what? And yet, I consider myself to be an extremely blessed individual, even with all of these calamities that have gone before me. And the question comes, people have come to me, honestly, have asked me, how could you possibly still have a smile on your face when you're dealing with all of this garbage, when you've got all this horrific stuff you're dealing with that you're going through, whether it be divorce or medical issues or employment concerns or finances. How is it that you can still keep a skip in your step with all of that going on? Well, the answer is, people ask you that before? Has anybody ever asked you that before? Yeah. With all of this stuff you're going through, how could you possibly have a smile on your face? Pastor, I'm sure people have asked you that. Well, here's my answer. I want you to try to use this. I have the God lens.
The what?
The God lens. Remember, lets you see things differently.
Yeah.
Right? And in this context, I'm going to say that wisdom is the God lens. Okay? Wisdom is something that's from God. And remember, my definition of wisdom is that you allow God to control your life and lead you and to follow His plan for you. It's going to be a much easier existence. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have health issues or financial and all that stuff, but your ability to see it and deal with it is going to be better than people who are stressed out and it's all on their own.
Well, you remember when I was going through all those financial problems, you were with me, in fact, in the apartment. And I never got down. Did you ever see me down crying because of it?
No, we're stressed
laughed
out
all the time.
Yeah. No, I never. Now, if we go also by the definition of wisdom that we've seen repeated innumerable times in here, follow me, obey my commands, that's the wise lens. Don't do all that stuff, you're blind. You see what I'm saying? So that's the God lens. Two things happen when you surrender the wheel of your existence. Two things happen when you put on the God lens. Number one, stress evaporates. Have you ever noticed that when you've told me this many times, when you have a burden that's on you and you just can't deal with it, it's bigger than you, and you're like, God, please help me deal with this. almost immediately there's this release for it. You know, it's like all of a sudden you've got the lenses on. The other thing is answers start to answer themselves. You know, the problems that you don't know that you've got, all of a sudden the answers are provided for you before you. I even mentioned this morning. You know, the whole warranty thing. When we cashed out that warranty, it happened to supply a need that we had exactly at that time. You know, wow, that was lucky. No. It's not. Now, those of us who actually apply this vision, this lens, to our day-to-day lives have an almost embarrassing advantage on people who don't. Have you seen people running around with like chickens with their heads cut off? I mean, panicking and stressed. People who go bald or gray way early in life because they're just constantly, worried about the next day or what they're going through.
Let me interrupt you. Stress didn't exist when we were going to school. Anybody ever tell you that they were stressed out?
Didn't know what the word
There was no
was.
stress. We had problems with it and had burdens, but nobody invented stress until the last 2 or 3 generations, I guess.
And keep in mind, I have not even now brought up to now, I haven't even brought up the other advantages like the blessings or forgiveness or prayer or eternity.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just talking about how to deal with your day-to-day existence. All right, there's so much more that comes with this package, and I can't really give up my life for that. I've got too many things I like to do. Whatever. Are you kidding me? You'd rather stay stressed out? You'd rather be like this? So I love it when I'm in a situation that most would find debilitating. Debilitating. They'd be like, oh, man, they're deflating, and yet my calm, my smile draws them in because they're aware of what I'm going through, and they ask the question, how can you possibly?
Gives you enough.
It gives me a unique opportunity to give my testimony. It gives me a chance to testify
What do you have?
what the God lens is. Now, I'm sure everybody in here agrees and feels the same way. You can probably point to several times. If people have approached you and asked you how you can, do you give them, or do you just say, well, I was lucky, or I was just smart about it? See, that ruins it. When you try to take credit for it, there's no way. So, throughout today's lesson, keep that lens in your mind, okay? Wisdom is when you have the lens. We all know what it is now. We've experienced it ourselves, so we know what it is. And when you look at things through the lens, or if you can imagine taking the lens off, and seeing things from their perspective. The greatest thing that you can do in a debate is to be able to tell what the other person is going through or what they're seeing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the problems I think that we as Christians have, especially those of us who know what the God's lens is, we don't look at it from their vantage point because we've never been exposed to it. You've been a Christian your entire life. I've been a Christian my entire life. You hear these stories about people who were in drug addiction and all that stuff and had to hit way low rock bottom. I never had to go through anything like that. But then again, I've never been without the God lens. I've never been in a position where God didn't, hey, you really shouldn't do that. Or being able to go to Him in prayer. I've never been without that. So, like I said, throughout today's lesson, you got to keep in mind, what if you took the God's lens off and looked at it through the world view? All right, so that's what we're going to be coping with today. So, what would seem unfair, what would seem bad luck, what would seem to be fate, etc., versus how God is in control, how it's voluntarily given, and how it shifts your viewpoint. All right, so keep that in mind. Those are the two dichotomies here. All right, so let's open up just the first verse in Ecclesiastes 6.
I have seen another evil under the sun, and it weighs heavily on mankind.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. Okay, so let's look at that. What it says. Let me bring it up in mind too. It says there very clearly. No, it's Ecclesiastes 7. There we go. Another evil under the sun, and it weighs heavily upon what? Mankind. Okay? So, notice that all of these things... Oh, wait, hold on. So, we're now going to see how mankind sees something, all right? So, you got to understand, your lens is off for this next set, all right? Dad, just a second verse.
God gives some people wealth, possessions, and honor so that they lack nothing their hearts desire. But God does not grant them the ability to enjoy them, and strangers enjoy them instead.
All right, so notice that all of these things are given by who?
God.
God. God gives everything. You didn't build that. You didn't do that. You don't, it's all God.
You don't own that.
And notice also in here that not everybody gets this stuff. It says God gives some people wealth, possessions, and honor, so they lack nothing, right? So,
and that also doesn't seem to matter whether you're a Christian or not.
that's true. And what's the fairness in that? What's the fairness? If you would think that if God is a true and just supernatural being, that he would want fairness for everybody. Everybody gets the same amount. Remember what I talked about last week? God is not a socialist. What is it, Pastor, your favorite line in the parable of the talents? He said, you've been faithful with a few things, so now I'm going to give you more. Isn't that what this is all about? He gives some people 10, some people 3, some people 1, and it's what you do with what he gives you is what's important to God. It's not unfair that he gave that guy 10 and that guy 1. What did this guy do with it? Well, he buried it, and that guy actually invested it. And I know what you're saying. What if the stock market did collapse? I wouldn't have been in there. Again, if God was a socialist, everybody would have equal amounts of wealthy possessions, honor, and not lack for anything. And then it says here that they don't have the chance to enjoy it. God doesn't grant them that ability.
What he's saying is that they die and leave it to their children or to strangers, and that's.
We also talked about that.
Hey, sometimes he dies, his wife gives to a second husband.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this then. Let's go to a different set of circumstances. What if you lived a long life and had a huge family? What then? Mom, 3 through 6.
A man may have 100 children and live many years, yet no matter how long he lives, if he cannot enjoy his prosperity and does not receive proper burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. It comes without meaning. It departs in darkness, and in darkness its name is shrouded. Though it never saw the sun or knew anything, it has more rest than does that man. Even if he lives 1,000 years twice over, but fails to enjoy his prosperity, do not all go to the same place?
Okay, so let's again take off the lens. All right, you gotta. If you do that, then if a man lives 1,000 twice over, simple math, 2,000 years, and has hundreds and hundreds of kids. Which, by the way, that was the definition of prosperity. You got a huge family, long, healthy life. Cattle, all of that stuff. But if he can't enjoy it, then what's the point? Or have a proper burial. See, without God, burial is the end. If you think about it, you take the lenses off. Without God, burial is the end. The legacy is what's important, apparently, to a dead man. I don't get that. But it's better off if he had never been born. It says a stillborn child. Because the unborn child didn't have to fret, didn't have to toil, didn't have to cry, didn't have to suffer.
And he goes to heaven.
Well, we don't. Well, once again, you got to take the lenses off. We're not. The lenses aren't on right now. You got to.
Yeah, I forget.
And so that means, and also, also want to point out to you that the same result, same thing. They're both dead. The only difference is this guy stressed out and suffered for all those years and didn't even get a proper burial, and the other one, shortcut in your circumstances with the lens on, shortcut to heaven, right there, But this guy is with not being able to enjoy his life. Now remember, where do we the last 3 verses of last week's lesson that you read? Where does joy come from? Where does the pleasure of your day-to-day activities? God given. Remember that was that whole point last time. All right. So if you see it this way, you can see how people can see life without God, and depression doesn't even touch it. From my perspective, I can't imagine. Remember the line that got me all bent out of shape was Samson jumped up and he didn't realize that the Lord had left him. That's scary to me. That's taking the lenses off. So, Pastor, can you read verse 7, please?
Everyone's toil is for their mouth, yet the appetite is never satisfied.
Never satisfied. I know some people like that. Now, put the lenses on for a second. All right, so let's put it back on again. Do you find satisfaction with your life?
I do.
Do you find over satisfaction, more than satisfaction with your life?
Best time of my life right now.
And you would have said that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, hopefully 5 years from now. You see what I'm saying? It's always satisfaction.
Yeah.
Right? But it's in here. You've got, take the lenses off now. You've got someone that it's like sitting at a table and having a huge banquet and not being able to enjoy any of it. It's almost torturous.
No tea.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Well, I mean, this Twilight Zone is full of stories like that. The guy who loved to read books and all of a sudden he can't read.
Yeah.
Because his glasses are gone. Or the guy that wants to go back to his youth with the same intellect that he has, but all of his internal organs are gone, so it's a waste. All of that sort of stuff. So having the opportunity but not being able to enjoy it is a stuff of tragedy. And so if you have the lenses off, life is tragic. But you said you find it's the best time of your life, even with all the bumps and bruises that you've had from then until now.
Don't.
What makes you so special? What makes all of us so special? We can find satisfaction with all the misery that's going around. And once again, like I said, we're statistically no better than anybody else. What is it that gives you that ability? The answer is God gives us that satisfaction. So if wisdom is the God lens, check out this next set of verses, 8 and 9, please.
Me?
Yes.
What advantage have the wise over fools? What do the poor gain? By knowing how to conduct themselves before others? 8 and 9.
8 and 9, yeah.
Better what the eye sees than the roving of the appetite. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind.
There. Chasing after the
Chasing
wind.
after the wind. Now, wisdom is not the lens in this one. When he talks about wisdom and what advantage the wise over fools, he's saying, and there's no answer to the question. He says, what advantage have the wise over fools? He never gives. It's almost like a rhetorical question. He doesn't provide an answer. He just says, what's the advantage? Once again, though, using my definition of wisdom, I know what the answer is. And life without God's guidance is meaningless. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. If you don't have God's guidance, you're just chasing your tail. All right? They say chasing the wind, but we would use the term chasing your tail, running in quicksand, any sort of spinning your tires, the same context. Dad, 10 through 12.
10 through 12. Let's see. Whatever exists has already been named, and what humanity is has been known. No one can contend with someone who is stronger. 11.
3 through 12.
The more the words, the less the meaning. And how does that profit anybody? For who knows what is good for a person in life during the few and meaningless days they pass through like a shadow? Who can tell them what will happen under the sun after they're gone?
Okay, so who knows what is good for a person in life? Well, Bloomberg says he does.
Yeah.
You don't need to drink all that sugar. Did you hear that he said that it's okay to increase the taxes on the poor because if they have extra money, they're just going to do damaging stuff themselves anyway? You didn't hear him say that? They released it recently. It says, sure, increasing taxes on the poor is a good thing because the less money they have, the less damaging stuff they can do to themselves.
He's a billionaire. But
Good thinking. Keep on talking.
Yeah.
He says so many don't. He's worse than Biden doing stuff he said.
So let me ask you this. Who knows what is good for a person in life? Answer me. God knows. Once again, the lens there, the guidance. Hold the hand. He'll lead you past all those pitfalls. I know some people that ignore guidance and they'd rather fall into the pitfalls and get the bumps and bruises.
Over and over again.
Even a rat learns not to get shocked more than twice. But I'm screaming to Solomon through these words. This whole morning I've been, I know the answer. God's the answer. I know it sounds like a cliche. Jesus is the answer. You hear that all the time. But he keeps asking the question, so I'm going to keep giving him the same answer. Now, if God is the answer, how do you get God's guidance?
Let go.
No. How do you get God's guidance? Come on.
The Bible.
Let's go through the Trinity here. So you get God's guidance. How do you do that?
You ask for Jesus.
Jesus in your heart, right? So how does Jesus get in your heart?
You open the door and let him in.
The Holy Spirit leads you to him. And how does someone get led to the Holy Spirit?
God.
People coming up saying, how could you possibly? smile. We are the beginning linchpin in that entire process. Our testimonial, our lenses. Someone comes up and asks us, how can you possibly be, well, here, let me show you. That gives them the openness to let the Holy Spirit do His work, which then hopefully leads to Jesus in the heart, which then leads to God being in control of their lives and giving another set of glasses on somebody else that when they are smiling in calamity, that someone can ask them. That's the process. That's the way it's supposed to work. So the answer to the whole question about how this begins is you and me. So ever notice how Jesus turned a lot of the ideas and concepts upside down on their head? Whoever leads, serves.
Yeah.
Whoever is first is last. And whoever is last is first. And whoever is better to give than to receive.
Love your enemies.
Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. All of these things totally anti-worldly views, right?
Lensless look.
Yeah, lensless, right? And that got a lot of people, what could he possibly mean by that? I think that actually turned a lot of people to put on the lens because they would ask, what does that mean? And then the Holy Spirit, and then
Wouldn't
Jesus.
it be great if there was a lens you could just hand it?
Then
Say, try this. Ooh.
You've
And everything is rose colored now.
you've got to go through the procedure
They made
yourself.
a song about that, rose-colored glasses.
You're not going to respect something that's just given to you. You actually have to live through it. And if you what kind of testimonial can you have? Where did you get your? Oh, well, Doug over the street over there gave me this lens. That's not a testimonial.
The lens is not going to fit.
Yeah.
Exactly. And what lens works for you isn't going to work for somebody else. They're all
She
custom
just
made.
pointed out this is the lens, right?
It is the lens. Well, that's where you get the wisdom, the insight that the lens provides. You're on the right track. You're seeing exactly what I'm saying. But the point is that a lot of people don't look at that. Oh, it's just a dusty old book that doesn't mean anything today. I'm telling you, that lens prescription works today just like it did back in the day, and it's going to work in the future. Problem is, a lot of people dismiss it. Hey, I've got an idea for it here. No, I don't need that.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with today's society. But anyway, so when you go through this whole concept of Jesus turning things up on its head and upside down, let's go to the next set. So who read the last one? You read the last set. Mom, verses 1 and 2 in Ecclesiastes 7.
A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting, for death is the destiny of every man. The living should take this to heart.
Okay. So death is better than birth. I agree with that. Put on the God lenses for a second. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
I mean, your birth is when you got put on here
Against
to
your
live through
will.
all this stuff.
Against your will. You didn't know.
And no choice in it, no choice in the matter whatsoever. But death is when you actually have a choice of your destination through all this stuff in here. So I'd agree with that. A lot of people wouldn't agree with that. How could death possibly be better than birth? You gotta look through it. Death, by the way, is the only thing guaranteed for everybody. They say death and taxes, but I mean, you could probably get away with that if you've lived as a hermit. But once again, death will wait you on the other side. There's no such thing as being able to escape death. And I'll tell you something else. It talks about how it's better to go to a house of mourning than a house of feasting, all right? House of celebration versus mourning, all right? Let me bring this up. Nana's death, all right, would be perceived as a tragic thing. She, loss of her faculties. My grandmother's passed away. It's been it's a horrible thing. But I want to point out that something amazing happened because of Nana's death. That was the day that I had determined that you and I were going to have lunches once a week.
Is that right?
Yeah, because I didn't want to waste the opportunity. That is also, by proxy, the same thing that affected me with Pop. When Pop was put in that thing, I had lunch with him. I had 2 lunches, one with him on Tuesday, one with you on Thursday. I would not have had that opportunity
She hadn't.
if I hadn't been made aware of it with her passing. So it can be a teaching method for other things that you do while you're here. You can learn a lot from people at the funerals. You can learn a lot. I mean, and not just this is a great man and the legacy behind him. He's already said is meaningless. It's what you take from it when you go to a house of mourning. You learn more from a house of mourning than you do from a house of celebration. Celebration, whatever. But the house of mourning, you actually, I'm not going to let that happen to me. Or I'm not going to let things like that slip me by. I'm going to take advantage of the opportunities that are How many times people buy life insurance because of a death in the family? You know what I'm saying? Or people decide that they're going to get married because of death in the family. You know, why would I'm not going to wait. You know, you never know what's guaranteed. So there is a lot to be said, a lot of wisdom that you can get from a death than you can from celebratory. All right. Pastor, can you read verses 3 and 4?
Frustration is better than laughter, because a sad face is good for the heart. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of pleasure.
Okay. Frustration is better than laughter. All right.
That's tough.
Right. Put the lenses on for a second. Okay.
Yeah.
So frustration. When do you get frustrated?
Things go the wrong way.
When you can't do something. When you know, you're beating up against the wall. You just can't do something. What does that lead to? With the lenses on. When you're frustrated, you hit this wall and you can't do it yourself.
When the lens is on,
Yeah, putting the lenses
you
on.
pray about it.
And then what happens?
Everything gets smoothed out.
You see what I'm talking about? How frustration leads people to the Lord.
I see.
Frustration gets that closer bond with the Lord. You may know about Him in the books, you may know the stories and creation, all that stuff, but it's more personal when you actually go to Him at your lowest, when you're frustrated, when you're a broken individual, and I can't do this. And then all of a sudden, why didn't you ask me in the first place? When we can't do something because of frustrations are too high, we often seek God. Frustration, then, if you follow it all the way down the line, can lead to salvation. Someone's frustrated, see you with a smile on your face, going through the same thing. How can you possibly?
Tell them.
Bad times, Pastor. What happens to church attendance during bad economic times?
The depression.
It decreases.
And what happens when times are bad happen?
It decreases. During the Depression, more people tithe than any other time. And during the Depression, Southern Baptists don't have to recall one single missionary. But several years ago, we had to recall some of those.
Now, this also begs the question. You were with me when we were teaching Judges. What's that cycle? Things are good, fat, happy. What happens? People start straying. They sin. They get down to the bottom. They cry out to God for help. He restores them, and then good times again, and then they fall again. You know, it's the same thing. And it's like you said, it's not just a biblical thing. This happens today.
During World War II, the church attendance was the best ever in the United States. And after World War II, more churches were built in a short, about 10-year period than ever before in the United States. It is because people focused their attention on the Lord during the time of crisis. The churches they went to were crowded, they couldn't hold, so as soon as they could, build new churches. Now, what's happening to those churches?
They're closing them
Some of them
up.
closing.
Exactly, they're closing them up. So, in fact, I saw a special the other day that said that they made a brewery out of an old church.
Yes, I'm not surprised.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, I mean, well, what about that one on Sullivan's Island? Isn't that someone's house?
What?
That big church, isn't that big church on the corner past Fort Moultrie? Isn't that someone's house?
No, that's the Baptist church. But there is a church on the island that is now.
The big block one down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's made out of brick, not brick, but rocks.
Yes, and isn't that someone's house?
Presbyterian or Lutheran church or something. It's small.
Yeah.
But it was large for a home. And somebody lived in it.
See?
I
Now-
always thought it'd be great to buy a church to live in. You got a hot tub, you know. You got a balcony, you know.
The
you can bedroom
acoustics
up in
are
the
great.
balcony.
The acoustics are great.
Oh yeah. You can break it up into sections and rent rooms out, you know.
It's haunted.
So let me ask you this then. Let's go back to this whole concept of frustration is better than laughter. How many souls have been saved through laughter?
Many.
But how many souls have been saved through frustration?
Well, it's more.
You see what I'm talking about?
But
Way more than
I
that.
think it depends on the individual to a great degree there.
Now, once again, though, if you don't have the lenses on and you just stay in your frustration, that's not it.
Right, right.
But when you get frustrated, when people can't do something on their own, that's usually when they. What did you say? There aren't any atheists in the foxholes.
Yeah.
It was something that's too big.
But if you put on the lens, you'll turn your frustration to laughter,
Exactly.
which is the goal.
And then people can ask you, how can you possibly laugh at this
Yeah.
situation?
Yeah,
It's a contagion. Sad face, good for the heart. Okay. Well, your sadness, doesn't that make room for Jesus to go inside your heart? I would say a sad face is good for the heart. It gives Jesus a chance to come in. See here.
Everybody prays when everything else has failed. You know.
Yeah, and I always said that we
Like
shouldn't treat the children's messages numerous times. We shouldn't treat God like in case of emergency break glass.
Yeah, put him in a box on a shelf.
Yeah, we do. Only when we really need him do we go to him. But anyway, so let's see, Dad, can you read 5-7?
5-7. Let's see. Frustration is better than laughter.
No, 5-7.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's 3. My eyes are not as good as they used to be. It is better to heed the rebuke of a wise person than to listen to the song of fools. Like the crackling of thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of fools. This too is meaningless. Extortion turns a wise person into a fool, and a bribe corrupts the heart.
So,
Wow.
Heed the rebuke of a wise person. The lens is on. All right, how can you possibly, heed the rebuke of a wise person?
Recognize his wisdom.
Exactly. Now, the Song of Fools, that's not caring, that's, ignoring the problems, distracting yourself. I love the crackling of thorns.
Yeah.
I love that sort of imagery. It's just great. But the crackling of thorns is just an annoyance. It doesn't do anything. The crackling of thorns doesn't increase the heat or anything.
You love to hear it.
I like to hear it. But once again, the snapping and popping of timbers, and everything doesn't contribute to the heat of it. It's just a noise. Just making noise is what it is. It's not constructive. Extortion.
You get into politics then.
I hate looking up a definition and finding the root word in the definition. And
I do too.
I had to do that 3 times. I had to go from extortion to extorting to extort. And all of them had the base word extort. I'm like, well, just let me go to the base word. To obtain from a person by force, intimidation, or undue legal power. So that's a tool for the earth. Think about it. The whole reason why everybody says, oh, the United States is so great is because we don't flex our muscle. And we can when we need to, but we have much strength, but we don't utilize it. Can you imagine if a tin-plated dictator took control of this country and all of its resources, what we would have? We'd have colonialism all over again.
Yeah.
I mean, just grab. America could do it too. America could go ahead and swallow up Mexico and Canada without even thinking about it. Probably this entire hemisphere, and then we're going to Europe, and then we're just go. But we're not like that because that's undue legal power. Right? We could, we should. So when you extort from somebody, that means you're using your power over somebody else. The Me Too movement is notorious for this. By the way, did you hear about the trial that went on this week? They came back unanimous with 3 counts, but the 2 biggest ones, Weinstein, they couldn't come back, and the judge said, "You go back and try again." But that's using undue legal power over somebody. Using superior force. Man, controlling women, dominating them, beating them, those sorts of things. That's looked down on. Why? We're the stronger, we should. But that's not what he's saying here. That's extortion. And what does it say that extortion does?
Extortion
turns a wise person into a fool.
Yeah.
You know what that means? Took the lens on it. You didn't ask God for guidance. You didn't ask him what you should do. You did what you wanted to do.
Kind of like First King, Saul.
So the point is that when you are a fool, is going through blind. The wise person has the God lens on because he's asking God for guidance. So it says here that if you extort, if you flex your muscle and use it without asking me, obviously, then that's a fool. And it turns a wise man into a fool. You could have been a wise person, but you didn't ask God, so now you're a fool. I think that David and Bathsheba qualifies.
Yeah.
All right. And he uses his power to undo against not only Bathsheba but her husband as well. All right. So and then does God extort? Does God use extortion?
In a way, yeah.
I'd say he doesn't. I'd say he punishes. He gives you the opportunity to do the right thing or not. But I don't find it extortion. And it says that bribery corrupts the heart, and that deals with Jesus' seed again. We just finished talking about that. The heart's important.
But
All right.
the Muslims do
Oh, of course, in any capacity, whether they're in leadership or in a household.
Yeah.
Sweetheart, you missed it. Can you read verses 8, 9, and 10?
The end of a matter is better than its beginning, and patience is better than pride. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. So 10.
Yes.
Do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it is not wise to ask such questions.
Okay, so there's a whole sort of list of proverbs here. This is the sort of stuff that is in Proverbs. A couple of them that stood out to me. Anger resides in the lap of fools. Now notice, it doesn't say anger shows up or fades away. It resides, stays there, right here.
Who's that remind you of?
I have some people. It also says that you shouldn't reflect on how the good old days.
Everybody does that.
Now, a comedian that I listened to, he said, it's not that the days were good. Youth was good. Youth is gone.
Yeah.
It's over. So you might like it because you were young at the time. And by the way, I also want to point out that today are the good old days for this generation.
For tomorrow.
It's always that way. And wouldn't that be longing for what's happened in the past, be a chasing of the wind, a chasing of your tail, longing for things the way that they could have been? It's foolish to do that. So it's a waste of time. It's not wise, which is foolish, to ask such questions. Longing for the bygone days is a waste of time. Now, let's get into some benefits of wisdom. Mom, 11 and 12.
Wisdom, like an inheritance, is a good thing and benefits those who see the sun. Wisdom is a shelter, as money is a shelter. But the advantage of knowledge is this, that wisdom preserves the life of its possessor.
All right, now that is key. All right, so following, obeying God, being wisdom, has its benefits. All right, it preserves those who do. Wisdom is the supernatural preservative. Think about that now. Why? Well, in the earthly context, he guides you around dangers. He keeps you, if you seek his guidance, and should I not, he'll lead you on the safe path. But look at even put the lenses on for a second. Heaven, eternity. Obeying God has its benefits. It preserves the life of those who do it. It preserves your life permanently in heaven. Let's see here. Pastor, 13 through 15.
Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what he has made crooked? When times are good, be happy. But when times are bad, consider this. God has made the one as well as the other. Therefore, no one can discover anything about the future. Is this meaningless? Is this meaningless life of mine? I have seen in this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these, the righteous perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in theft and wickedness.
Okay.
That's
it. 15. So God made both good and bad times. What is it that Job said this? He was really big, why don't you curse God to his face? He said, God gives and God takes away. God is in control. You can take solace in that. You can take some meaning in that. It says the righteousness and the wickedness, all right? So he's got both of these persons, all right? So you got the righteous guy over here and the wicked over here. The wicked has a long life and is very prosperous, and the righteous doesn't. Is that fair? Well, I want to point out to you that I think long life is an unrelated variable. I think the length of your life is not necessarily based on how wicked or righteous you are. At least in earthly manner. Now, with the lens on, we know the difference. One guy is going to go south, the other guy is going to go to heaven, and we know that. And that's with lenses on. So that's with wisdom. That's with God asking God's guidance. Let's, and I'll refer back to the wisdom benefits before. All right, 16 through 20, sweetheart.
Do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? Do not be over wicked, do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes. 220. Wisdom makes one wise person more powerful than 10 rulers in a city. Indeed, there is no one on earth who is righteous, no one who does what is right and never sins.
Right. So, whoever fears God is going to avoid all extremes. Why? Because you let Him guide you around all this nonsense. And God is all about balance. Remember, a couple of weeks ago, if not last week, we learned that working hard but also enjoying life. One hand in each, rather than sitting on your hands or working hard with both hands. You got to give and take. One hand in tranquility. That was the one. And it also says here that we all sin. That's another universal constant. I love it when it says wisdom makes one wise person more powerful than 10 rulers in a city.
Yeah.
Having God's guidance. How could you possibly? You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about. All right, I'll read. Let's see here. 21 through 25, Dad, real quick. Actually, no. I'm gonna hold you off on that one. Mom, 21 through 25.
Do not pay attention to every word people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart that many times you yourself have cursed others. All this I tested by wisdom, and I said, I am determined to be wise, but that was beyond me. Whatever wisdom may be, it is far off and most profound. Who can discover it? So I turned my mind to understand, to investigate, and to search out wisdom and the scheme of things, and to understand the stupidity of wickedness and the madness of folly.
So he put his glasses on.
Yeah.
That's what he did. He researched it. He cultivated it. He figured out, that wisdom is, seeing things from God's vantage point, because He's going to be the one that can guide you around. But keep in mind, he had 1,000 women in his life, right?
How wise is that?
And all the idols that they brought in, remember that, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Dad, 1 verse 26.
I find more bitter than death the woman who is a snare. I wondered why you say this. Whose heart is a trap, and whose hands are chains. The man who pleases God will escape her, but the sinner she will ensnare.
Enough said. I'm not going to
Her
go.
name is. Oh, no.
I'm not going to go much any more than that. But notice he said that a man of God with God's vision will be able to escape that, and the one who doesn't will just be ensnared by it.
I escape.
All right, so I'm going to read the last set, 27 through 29. Look, says the teacher, this is what I have discovered. Adding one thing to another to discover the scheme of things. While I was still searching but not finding, I found one upright man among 1,000, but not one upright woman among them all. This only have I found. God created man upright, but they have gone in search of many schemes. So God made us upright, yet we fall to various vices, whether it be him and his wives, or peer pressure, or money, or power, etc. We fall prey to all of that stuff. I'm grateful for my lenses. It makes traveling through life simpler, easier, more satisfying. It takes stress to minimal levels at best. It helps me look beyond death. God gives satisfaction. In fact, He overgives satisfaction. What is it? My cup runneth over.
Amen.
Wisdom preserves. Letting God guide you, He gives you safely through this life, number one. But and that doesn't mean you're not going to have any problems, but he can guide you around these problems. And not only that, but He guides you safely to eternity in heaven. All of this stuff on earth, the day-to-day, the struggles, the triumphs, chasing the wind. Be that person that gets to answer the question, how can you possibly? Because the person who testifies, if you testify about your lenses and how they can get their own pair too, will be leading to them being able to pass it on to somebody else.
Amen. Good lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Very good.
Would you all like to split a Pepsi?
Yeah,
Yes.
some caffeine.
Or you want one each?
No.